Alrighty, welcome back to Nite Line. I hope you enjoyed the first hour with our Skype interview all the way from Greece. And now joining me is Don Horwitz via Skype all the way from New York. Welcome to Nite Line, Don.
Thank you for having me. It's a blessing to be here with you today.
I'm excited about this interview because we got to talk a little bit before the interview, and I'm already learning a lot, and I know I'm going to learn a lot more, and our viewers are going to learn a lot. But Don, you're the Executive Director of Christians Care International. Give us a brief overview of Christians Care International and of yourself, because you've got a fascinating story with your family.
Well, I'd be happy to. So let's start with Christians Care International. We're a Christian ministry that brings together Christians from around the world to support Israel and the Jewish people. We're a ministry that's grounded in Isaiah 49:22, where God calls out to the nations to bring his children home. And he's calling out to the Gentiles in the nations to help gather the Jewish people back to Israel. So we look at Aliyah the word Aliyah means to rise up. And it's the word that's used to describe when a Jew comes back home to Israel, to move back to Israel. But we're a unique ministry in the sense that we view Aliyah two different ways. We view it as, of course, getting on an airplane and going to Israel, but we also view it as the rising up of a person, the rising up to God. The people that we work with in the former Soviet Union are living in incredibly difficult circumstances. Mm-hmm. They're living in abusive environments, incredible poverty. They've been repressed for years through Soviet domination. They've been stripped of all their religion. So how can you expect anybody, let alone, a Jewish person, anybody in the world, to just get on an airplane, move to a developed country, and function properly?
Right.
So at Christians Care International, we develop very innovative programs that rehabilitate all of the people that we help. We have vocational training programs in Israel to help new immigrants find jobs. We train in the areas of culinary arts, professional bus driver training, computer programmers, professional travel agents. We have schooling programs for children, even for us autistic children. We have special education programs. We have our own children's home. We have over 1,700 orphans and abused and neglected children in our programs right now. So it's an incredible ministry, and we really do work to rise an individual up to God in the truest sense.
Wow. Let's start. For centuries, the Jewish people have been scattered throughout the world. And then, of course, Israel became a nation again in, 48? And now we're seeing a huge migration, naturally, of Jews coming back to Israel. How many Jews are there in Russia right now, still?
Well, there's different estimates. I mean, if you go by the official estimates, there's hundreds of thousands. We believe that there's still well over 1 million because we're on the ground working every day.
Right.
There's so many Jewish people that have been repressed for so long, and they're so afraid to even say that they're Jewish because of the immense anti-Semitism that they face, that they're literally hiding.
Wow.
So we believe that there's well over 1 million in the former Soviet Union left.
Now, the population of Israel is around, 7 million, something like that?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that there are more Jews throughout the world than there are in actual Israel?
Well, it's pretty equal, actually.
Okay.
I think it's fairly equal. I'm not an expert in statistics, so I don't want to be quoted on this, but I think it's pretty closely divided at this point.
Well, now, let's go back to you and your family. Your grandparents came from Russia. Talk to us, because this is kind of fascinating.
Well, I guess we can start that I'm in a very unique position as the leader of a Christian ministry, and I'm Jewish. So people, they scratch their head at that all the time. Well, how could it be a Christian ministry if a Jewish man is leading it? Well, it's an incredible story, and God brought me to lead this ministry, and he took me on a path in my life, and really that I had no idea that I was being led down. But my grandparents were immigrants. They ran for their lives because they were Jewish during the revolution in Russia. They were afraid of their lives, and they immigrated to America. And of course, my parents were born right after they arrived. They arrived in 1917, and my parents were born in 1919. But unfortunately and sadly, a lot of my family was lost in the Holocaust.
Right.
You know, I remember growing up when I would go to holiday dinners at my grandmother's house, and my relatives, I would say to my dad, "Pops, you know, what's these numbers on everybody's arms?" I remember vividly
Wow.
when I was a little boy, and you know, it was so painful that nobody can speak about it. They would say something, "Well, your uncle, this was in a concentration camp," but I had no idea what it really meant.
Right.
But the pain that they suffered in their lives was so immense, and we lost so many people to the Holocaust in the family. But that was the beginning stage of my journey.
Yeah.
And as I grew up, my career was in the TV industry. I owned a production company, so I spent
Excellent.
the majority of my career, over 30 years, producing TV commercials and a little bit of documentary work. So I had no inkling what God had in store for me. I was happy in my career. I was successful. And
Well, what led you into where you're at now?
well, it all started basically when I adopted my 3 children from an orphanage in Siberia.
Wow.
My wife and myself decided that we wanted to adopt, and we wanted to give a child a chance at a life.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, well, let's adopt one child, maybe 2 or 3 years old. And another coincidence is I happened to go through a Christian adoption agency in South Carolina, actually.
Wow.
And I was living in Florida at the time. But they sent us a video of twin sisters who were 8 and 10 years old.
Uh-huh.
And my wife and I took one look at them, and of course, we fell in love, and we had no, we didn't want to adopt more than one child, but you see something like that, how can you say no? I mean, it was instant, oh my God, look at these 2 beautiful children. So we went through the process, we adopted them. And
Now, did you go to Siberia to meet them?
I did. It was my first trip to Russia, and it was the bringing back to my roots.
Well, how does an American, I mean, you speak English. Did you speak Russian? Did they
No, I
speak
didn't
English?
Didn't speak any Russian. They didn't speak English.
And they're 8 and 10 years old. Naturally, you can't separate, you don't want to separate sisters, so you adopted them both. But how did that work, not only because of the language barrier, but that because I was adopted when I was 8 months old.
Oh, that's a blessing.
All I know is my adopted parents. I don't know my biological parents. They have memories of, you know, their life in Siberia and the orphanages in Siberia and everything for 8 and 10 years of these memories. And then you come into their life. How did that work? How did that affect them? I mean, I know it had to be a better situation than it was, but tell us about that process. That's
Well, it's an incredible experience. I mean, first of all, you're right. A child is fully developed. You know, well, not fully developed as a person, but you know, pretty well developed.
I mean, they're walking, they're talking, they're they're emotional, they're friends, everything. Yeah.
Your brain pretty fully develops by 3 years old when you're at that stage of development. So I started off by sending them some letters and introducing my wife and I, and we took some pictures of our dogs and took some pictures of the house. And the coordinator who was helping us with the adoption came up with this, what I thought was a phenomenal idea. And she said, go out and buy 2 teddy bears and stuffed teddy bears and take pictures of them. Take pictures of you holding them, take pictures of the dogs with them, take pictures of the teddy bears in their room, and we'll send the teddy bears to the kids.
Oh, wow.
So we took these pictures of the teddy bears, and we sent the pictures of the teddy bears and the teddy bears with them.
Wow.
And we got to communicate just a little bit, which was unusual. That usually doesn't happen in an adoption. But we were very lucky, and we got to communicate with our children through mail. Of course, there was a translator involved.
Right.
But it was this incredible building process where we got to speak. The adoption took about the same amount of time that a pregnancy would have taken.
Oh, wow.
It took about 9 months.
Wow.
From start to finish. So
wow.
It was incredible.
Well, now, how old are your children now? Or those 2 girls, at least?
Well, my 2 girls were the 2 youngest out of the 3. They're 29 and 27 right now.
Wow. And so naturally, I guess they speak English now. And are they still in the U.S.? Or are they involved in the ministry with you as well?
No, they're not involved in the ministry. My middle daughter, who's the 29-year-old, is a registered nurse.
Wonderful.
And my youngest daughter is having a good time in life, and she has a fiance now and kind of exploring different options. She's interested in being a yoga instructor.
Wow.
And then my oldest daughter, who was their best friend in the orphanage, who I ended up going back to adopt, she was 14 at the time when I adopted her. She's a dental assistant, and she's married now. But they had, the children suffered, my children suffered an immense amount of abuse, physical abuse, unfortunately, sexual abuse. So we weren't prepared as parents, and they weren't prepared living the life that they lived before they came to live with us, what life was going to be like in a stable family.
Right.
So they were removed from their home by the social services, and they were placed in an orphanage, which was fairly abusive.
Yeah. I know I've been in orphanages in Eastern Europe, Romania and Moldova specifically, and the condition, and this was in recent, the last 10, 12 years, and I've just heard, horror stories about during the Soviet Union, and around the fall of communism and how bad it was. I know my mother, her first trip to Romania was in either 89 or 90, so right there at the fall of the Soviet Union. And I remember seeing the video of it, and it's just horrific conditions that these kids live through. I mean, you're talking about no hygiene, no diapers, no food. It's just horrible conditions. What
try to picture yourself as a small child. The way that it works in a Soviet orphanage, former Soviet bloc orphanage, is that you generally have groups of children within the home. Average orphanage can have between 100, 150 children in them. So basically, they're divided into what they call family units. And a family unit usually consists of about 30 children. And they range in ages from anywhere from 3, 4 years old up to 15 years old, 16 years old maybe. And you have one caretaker. You have one caretaker caring for those 30 children. And the 30 children are calling this caretaker mama. And so try to picture yourself as a child and having a nightmare at night, for example, and waking up in a panic and crying, but nobody's there to come to you. The caretaker, that one caretaker might be down in the kitchen doing something, or might be involved, or might be on a break, or, so this is what contributes to the abnormal development of the brain. When a baby is a young baby, and you're sitting at a high chair with the baby, you see a baby, they throw the spoon off of the high chair all the time. And what happens when they throw something down? Mother bends down, picks it up, puts it back on the high chair. Mother and father play peekaboo, and they cover their eyes. Where am I? Boom. They're back. They come back. Well, when a child doesn't, these funny games and these little things are what build the brain, build normal structure in the brain. And when those aren't there, the brain wires differently. So we know now, through brain imaging, through neuroscience, that the brain of a child that's been abused and neglected is different than the brain of a child that grows up in a normal family. The brain is smaller. There's more black spots in the brain, so there's more empty space in the brain. But what the miracle of God and the miracle of our development as a human being, we know now that through neuroplasticity, you can grow the brain again. Through the right types of behaviors, through the right types of therapeutic treatment, you can increase the size of the brain and make it healthier and establish new connections in the brain. And that's what our programs do in our children's rehabilitation programs. And unfortunately, we didn't have that when I adopted my children. So we went through therapist to therapist to therapist. Nobody could figure out, what was wrong with the children. They would act out. There was drug addictions as they got older. There was multiple suicide attempts because we didn't know how to handle the adoption process. We didn't know how to make them okay. We didn't know what was wrong with them. They didn't even understand what reactive attachment disorder was, really what post-traumatic stress disorder was. All these syndromes, these fetal alcohol, all of my children were alcohol exposed. So it leads to learning disability. It leads to a different way of thinking. But nobody understood this back then. And thank God now, there's so much better training and so much better preparation, and the adoptions go so much smoother now. But these children, they just want a home so bad, and they want to be loved, and they want to be held. And every child deserves to have that in their life.
Exactly.
Because these children have done nothing wrong in their life. It's their parents that turn to alcohol because of the horrific situations. It's the parents that turn to drugs.
Yeah.
But it's just so sad. And as Christians, as people with the love of God, we need to wrap our arms around these children and lift them up. They need us so bad.
For years, I've been exposed to, children in those situations, and then normal or regular children in regular homes or whatever you want to call it. And you could definitely see a difference, and I just assumed for all these years that it's because they didn't know any better. I mean, they're a product of the raising, but this is actually a neurological or physical condition because their brain wasn't developed properly through attention and care and love and fill in the blank. Right.
Well, that's part of it, yes. I mean, behavioral issues, of course.
So how do you start? Of course, let me mention, y'all have orphanages in the Ukraine, and where else?
We have an orphanage in Ukraine, and then we work in multiple orphanages around Ukraine.
So when you see these children that have these symptoms and have these problems, how do you begin to get them back to some level of normal? And how do you grow that brain back? That's fascinating.
Well, it's a very complex rehabilitative process. And like I say, at Christians Care International, the ministry, we're very blessed to be able to have our own team of neuroscientists and neuropsychologists that design our programs for us. But what you have to do, and the reason this is so difficult to do in rehabilitating these children, is you have to literally change the environment that they live in. So if you're in an orphanage, there's multiple people that you come in contact with every day. It's not just the caretaker. It could be the teacher in school. It could be the cook in the kitchen. It could be the maintenance person. It could be any one of these people. And if these people don't speak to the child the same way and set the environment the same way, then the process is not going to work. So it's a very controlled environment. It's a very complex process. But the results, I have to tell you, it's a miracle. Just for an example, we have a young man, Yaroslav, who came from a very abusive family. And we brought him into our program because we found him homeless in a bus station.
Oh, my goodness.
And his mother was out wandering. She was alcoholic. And he was about 12 years old when we found him. And we brought him into our home, our children's home in Ukraine. He had night terrors. He wet his bed every night. He was petrified of people. If you talked to him, he couldn't make eye contact with you. He would either look down or look off to the side. He was just devastated inside, not only because of the loss of his mother, but he had no normal social interaction. He had no normal interaction.
Right.
And he came into our program, and he was under our care for about 4 years. And I'm happy to say that he just we helped him move to Israel to go to school there.
Wow.
But the difference between then and now, it's a miracle. It's really a miracle. And it just goes to show you that if you really invest in a human life, if you take the time and invest, you can change the life of a person. And really, that's what God wants us to do. Is it ever really enough to see a person on the street? Of course, we can't do everything, but is it ever enough just to give $1 to somebody when, or do we really need to lift these people up and wrap our loving arms around them? And that's really what we need to do. And I think the biggest blessing you can get from God is to really helping your neighbor, helping a child, helping another person to rise up to God. So it's a miracle.
How many kids have you helped move from former Soviet Union into Israel to date? Do you know?
Well, we've helped over 87,000 people move to Israel to this point. I don't actually have the exact breakdown of children in front of me.
But it's a lot. It's a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, it's a lot.
How little time or how much time does it require? Does it vary by child to see a difference or to make a complete difference in their lives?
You know, every child is a unique individual. Every child is a unique case. There's some children who have suffered immense abuse. There's some children whose parents just turned to alcohol recently. It really depends on the individual case. We've seen children come in and out of our program in a year, and we have children still in our program who've been there for maybe 6, 7 years.
Wow.
So,
Is there a certain age? I know the sooner that you reach the child, the better. But I mean, if somebody's in their teens, and I mean, are they still susceptible to that kind of condition?
the beautiful thing about neuroplasticity is that you and I can change our brain at any time. You can do brain exercises. You can start learning a foreign language. You can open up new channels in your brain. So that's the beauty of neuroplasticity, is that there is no age limit.
Wow.
That there is on opening up new pathways in your brain.
That's fascinating. Now,
It is fascinating.
we just got maybe 6 or 7 minutes left. We don't have enough time, I'm telling you, Don. This is so cool to me. But let's talk about the kids in your orphanage and the orphanages that you work in. Y'all are not currently adopting children out. Is that correct?
Yeah, we don't deal with adoptions. And what most people don't understand, let's say the official numbers won't agree with the number I'm going to give you, but I'm going to tell you that there's over 1 million orphans in the former Soviet Union right now. Out of that, there's a very, very small percentage that are adoptable.
Wow.
You know, maybe 10, 14%, somewhere in that range, maybe even less. It varies by country. And the parental rights haven't been terminated in most of these children because they still have parents.
Right.
They've been taken away from the people that abuse them, but the parental rights haven't been terminated.
That was one of the weird things for me when I started getting into orphanages. It's like, oh, they still have parents. I'm like, oh, and then it finally clicked. Not everybody that in an orphanage is an orphan. You know, their parents are still, you know, not all of them are dead. So,
Right.
Yeah, a lot of them are in prison or drug problems or stuff like that. So,
right, and,
Now-
and the system moves very slow there,
Yeah.
and it's very bogged down, and so many times parental rights should be terminated, but they're not.
Now, in Russia, Russia has cut off all adoptions to the U.S. at least. I'm not sure about other countries, but definitely to the U.S. If somebody's watching tonight and they are interested in adoption, because you've been there, you've adopted 3 children. I was adopted. I have 3 children, but I was adopted, so I have some idea. I know what it feels like, and it's awesome because I tell people all the time I'd be dead or in prison if I wasn't adopted. You know, who knows where my life would be. But what kind of advice would you give to somebody that's interested in adopting either domestically here in the U.S. or foreign in, you know, wherever country?
Well, unfortunately, Russia has cut off adoption to the U.S., and it's a tragedy that children suffer because of political positioning, and that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
It's a political issue, not a caring for children issue, that's for sure.
Right.
And I was in Russia when the law went through, and I was actually interviewed on Russian TV at that point. And we work with some congressmen, we work with senators, and I urge everybody to keep writing their senators, congressmen, and to pray that adoption opens up one day. But Russia is open to other countries.
Right.
If you live in other countries, you can adopt. Matter of fact, Israel can adopt children from Russia.
Wow.
But I would urge people, there's millions of children all over the world, including right here in the U.S., that need homes. And there's amazing agencies out there in your communities. Talk to your church, talk to Christian services in your community, and reach out to them. And there's just so many children who need love and who need good homes.
Yeah. Well, Don, we definitely need to talk more when we have more time. We got to have you back on the program. But before we close, if somebody wants to get involved in Christians Care International, if they want to donate, what kind of information do they need to do that? Can they come to the Ukraine to help, I mean, physically?
You know, we can't take volunteers because of the health and safety issues within our children's homes. We have to keep the children safe, and of course, we're very protective.
Definitely.
But the amazing thing about our ministry is we open up our ministry like no other ministry out there. You can, if you donate to our ministry, you can actually see the children or the adults. So we have many different programs who you're donating to. We take people in on Skype conferences to meet the people that they help. And we also do tours to Ukraine, where we take our donors out and they actually come in with us. We're not able to offer positions to volunteer, but we do tours, and we do take people into our programs. So if you want to learn more about us, you can go to www.christianscare.org. That's Christians with an S, care.org. You can email me directly at don@christianscare.org. I'd be happy to speak to anybody. And I would encourage you to visit us, visit our website, and take a look at what we're doing.
Is there sponsorship for individual children?
When it comes to children, we don't do individual sponsorship because it's not fair. We have children, 1,700 children under our care.
Yeah.
So everything goes into, one program when it comes to children. When you're sponsoring an older person or something like that, we do have individual sponsorships. But with children, we have to divide the money equally to care for all the children in our program.
But folks,
and we have hundreds of children waiting to get into our programs.
Wow.
So we need help.
Folks, check out the website. Again, it's christianscare.org. I think they had it on the screen just a second ago. christianscare.org. When are you going back?
We're there about every 6 weeks.
Wow.
So I'll be there the beginning of October. I'll be going over there.
Well, Don, thank you so much for taking time to Skype us today. And again, we got to talk again soon when we have an hour, because we just barely scratched the surface on this one. So
I would love to. And thank you, and God bless you all.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And be sure to join us tomorrow night for another episode of Nite Line. We'll see you then.